this was a lot of, there was radio, and then there was early TV, and then there was, kind of mid TV before cable. They owned everything, or gave to it, paid for certain reporters. They put them on the payroll, or they would, invite them over for big fancy parties. They paid for all of their positive press. And when I was a kid, I remember hearing commercials sponsored by the Council on Foreign Relations. And I've tried to find them. I would love to play them. I can't, because I think they've all been disappeared. But it was all about, and this was in the 70s. It was all about, it was public service announcements about thinking local, acting global, all these one world slogans. And that was their attempt at mass manipulation.
Yeah. And I can see it. Like I said, it's their special family. It's like one of those things on the surface, just like Gates and some of the others, they look like they're very philanthropic. They look like they're helpful. They look like they're such great, amazing people. But then once you get just a little under the surface, you're like, oh.
According to this article that I have, it says the Rockefeller goal today is the creation of a new world order, a one world government that would control all of mankind. But wanting a global superstate and getting one or two different things. How do the Rockefellers expect to round up all the cows and herd that's into the one world corral? And according to CFR member James Warburg, who testified before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee in 1950, February 17th, he said, quote, "We shall have world government whether or not you like it, by conquest or consent." And he was controlled, James Warburg, he was controlled by the Rockefellers. He was one of the big bankers. He's the one who was on Jekyll Island, who started the Federal Reserve, which swindled the U.S. out of all of their gold and their money. And according to this, here's a few organizations in the United States that are financed and or directed by the Rockefellers. So, of course, you have the Council on Foreign Relations, you have the American Assembly, American Association for the United States, American Friends Service Committee, Arden House Group, Atlantic Union, Business Council, Center for Advanced Study in Behavioral Sciences, which is basically like Tavistock, Center of Diplomacy and Foreign Policy, Chatham House, which is a dangerous organization, Citizen Committee for International Development, Federation of World Governments, Foreign Policy Association, Institute for World Order, National Planning Association, U.S. National Commission, Trilateral Commission, World Affairs Council, the United World Federalist. Do you see a pattern there?
Yeah.
Almost all of them mention something global, something world affairs, world order, world governments, and none of those are official governmental offices. These are all made up by the Rockefellers, funded by the Rockefellers. It's very much like the World Economic Forum.
And for most stuff I could find, it almost seems like it runs right inside with the World Economic Forum.
They do cross streams. There's no doubt about it. They do cross streams. I think the Rockefellers were too old and too in their own lane when the World Economic Forum really started to kind of take hold and catch steam to be a part of it, because their big baby was the CFR and the Bilderberg Group. But there's no doubt that they hitched wagons.
Oh, yeah. They definitely hitched wagons. It was kind of one of those, they're like, oh, hey, yeah, but hey, check this out.
According to this, in March 1949, federal unions set up a political action unit called the Atlantic Union Committee. The first president of this committee was the former Court Justice Owen J. Roberts, who said he considered national sovereignty a silly shibboleth. Also, according to the Los Angeles Examiner, they said they, which would be the nations of the Western Europe, would impose their socialism in place of our Republican self-government, extract taxes from us as they pleased, draft our men for their armies and our women for their factories, appropriate bulk of our productive wealth for their own enrichment. The goals of the Atlantic Union apparently haven't changed. However, you're not going to hear about it because newspapers, TV shows, news outlets, they are forbidden to talk about it.
Yeah, they're owned by these people.
Yeah, if you do, the Rockefellers, who own gadzooks amounts of businesses or have major interest in tons of businesses, and I could go through that list, but just look it up on your own. Just look it up where all their tentacles reach out to. If you buck them in any way, shape, or form, they'll pull their advertising.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing we see with George Soros. It's the same thing we see, of course, with Bill Gates. It's the same thing we see with a lot of these characters. The mainstream media, the newspapers, they will not touch them, and they will give them glowing reviews because they pour tons of money into to keep them afloat, basically.
Yeah, they're horrible.
So also, one of the things that the Rockefellers have been involved in, as you mentioned earlier, they were in on the whole prohibition thing.
Yep.
Well, they're very big into taking away firearms, any kind of protection by the citizens, because they know that that is a hindrance to the ultimate takeover. And I do believe that one of the reasons that we're seeing this ramped up so much right now is because a lot of these, and I know the Rockefellers, that crew's all gone, but their kids are out there running all these foundations and everything, and they're carrying on the brand. But you also have a lot of guys like Klaus Schwab, Soros, all these guys who are the brains and who are the control freaks and who were the ones who put all the money into it, so they call all the shots. They're getting way older. And as we played in the beginning, there's a clip of David Rockefeller saying, this window's closing. It won't be there forever. And there are strong forces who are trying to keep us from creating this globalized system, this one world system. And so I do believe they did not get a lot of things that they set out to do because, again, we've talked about this before. U.S. is the last domino to fall. If they can get the U.S. to fall, it's over. But the Constitution is so strong and has been so strong that they can't get around it. They're trying. They've been chipping away. And so anytime you hear from Congress, from the Senate, from the House, that this is good for you and it's not really going to impede on your right, or we're just doing this for your safety or protection, it's all a scam. And these guys set that in motion because through the CFR, through their paying lots of Fifth Avenue marketing firms, psychologists, people who were experts in mass manipulation, they've basically set this system up to where they want basically for all of us to be scared, to be running to the government for help and willingly give up all of our rights, and then it's over. Like, that's the trap.
There's a lot of issues with these. Sorry, I kind of got lost there for a second because I was reading a thing about the John D. hiring substitute soldiers for the Civil War, which I didn't even know was a thing. Did you see that?
No.
The Civil War thing? Apparently, so that he didn't have to fight in the Civil War, he was able to pay somebody else to take his place. So basically what they did is to make sure the rich could stay alive, the rich could pay the poor people to go fight and die for them.
Well, that's kind of how the army is set up.
Yeah.
You know, attract the poor people, give them some sort of incentive to be there, promise them a bunch of stuff, put them out to take all the bullets. Well, you know, that's the famous Creedence song. I'm not a fortunate son. I ain't no senator's son. Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened in the Civil War. And it amazes me because it's one of those things I hadn't, and I was looking at something else that I was going to talk about on what you were talking about. And I just kind of, that caught my eye and I'm like, wait, what? So, yeah, he said this was John D's quote. I wanted to go in the army and do my part, Rockefeller said, but it was simply out of the question. There was no one to take my place. We were in a new business, and if I had not stayed, it must have stopped. And with so many depended on it. So he was too important to do his duty. So he paid somebody else to do it.
But that's how these people work. See, they keep their name, and they carry it over into their politics as well. And also trying to create this. We're very philanthropic. All we do is we just care about everybody. But it's just mass manipulation is what it is. And that's the same thing they do there.
Yes. Because that was it. He was philanthropic. He paid these soldiers to do it. Plus, he gave money to the Union Army in donations. And that's what he runs into with the philanthropic. And that's one of the things I keep finding with all this philanthropic. It's like you said earlier. Now they owe him.
Oh, of course.
They owe him a debt. And now it's whether it's going to be a favor later or something, he's going to get the money back probably tenfold, or he's going to get power back tenfold.
There's also some strangeness involved in the Rockefellers. Did you read about, or do you know much about Michael Rockefeller?
Yes. Whoa. Yeah, about him, which honestly, his is the most saddest one, honestly, because it sounded like he just wanted out. And he wanted to go do his thing and be an artist and then everything.
Yeah. I mean, Michael Rockefeller was kind of an adventurist. He really was just sort of living on the family money. Mm-hmm. He was traveling the world, globe hopping, not doing anything particular, but just enjoying life as a Rockefeller, I guess, is how you would put it.
He was, but a lot of the ones that I read about it, what it really was is he was supposed to be anyway, working for one of the museums and the art museums to get art from Native American tribes in different places and send them back.
Well, yeah. And that's what got him killed.
Yes.
So Michael Rockefeller was in New Guinea. He found this lost tribe of New Guinea. And he tried to bribe him with, tons of money, large sums of money to go head hunting and make shrunken heads for him. This tribe had no use for money, and they didn't really like the fact that he was there kind of bugging them. He wouldn't leave them alone, and he was trying to get these shrunken heads for this museum like you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, this tribe had been headhunting for like a generation or two. Like they had given it up, but he was trying to coerce them.
There was a few things that I read where, that said they had it. They supposedly had, or the Dutch, because the Dutch were the ones in charge of New Guinea at that time. They said that they had, but then there's proof that maybe they hadn't. But there's like 3 or 4 different stories that I've found.
So there's a dispute as to whether they were actually still doing it. I don't know who would they be headhunting, because
other tribes.
According to the research I got, they had given it up, but possibly they were continuing. The reality is that they weren't into this guy bribing them, so they basically headhunted him, and they killed him. And has his body ever been found?
No, his body was never found. And for the families, up until Nelson Rockefeller's death, he still would say that no, he drowned. Because apparently it was one of those things, the catamaran that he had, because he was with another person named Rene Wassing, who was an anthropologist. The catamaran capsized, and he tried to swim to shore. And so the official story was that he just never made it to shore and he drowned.
But according to people who have gone to talk to the tribe, they had a different story. That they attacked him basically and cut his head off.
And ate him.
And they did. Well, according to sources, we don't know that for a fact, but that's their story. Yeah,
their story is that they found him, cut his head off, ate him. Supposedly, at one point, I read somewhere that there was a skull found, but somehow on the trip from New Guinea to the Dutch, whatever, it disappeared.
Right. Which,
so no one knows if it was really his skull.
I'm pretty sure it was, otherwise it wouldn't have disappeared.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're carrying a Rockefeller's skull, they probably got confirmation on the flight, and the family's like, we can't let this out. We're just going to stick with the drowning story. Get rid of it.
Yeah. And it's one of those things, there's a lot of information, and where a lot of this came out was they found a bunch of stuff that the Dutch had, letters that were supposed to have been destroyed, but they were found. Because the Dutch had figured this out pretty soon after it happened. But then it was pretty much like they were like, nope, shut it off. This never happened. He drowned.
Well, there's also the case of Winifred